welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name's Rudy Mireles, and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. Got a packed program for you today. You may remember that last week we were talking about that big developing news as a oil refinery looks to open up its operations here in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas, not too far away from an incoming LNG production facility and the city of Starbase, which plays host to Starship launches from the company SpaceX. Well, here to talk about it today with myself and our South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez is Jim Chapman, board member with Save RGV and Friends of the Wildlife Corridor. We'll bring him in a little bit later in the program, but first, as always, we're going to start today by taking a look at what's trending across the border with some big news. The man who once headed President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown, former Border Patrol Commander-at-Large Gregory Bovino, is now retiring at the end of this month after nearly 30 years. Bovino, who joined the Border Patrol in 1996, oversaw the federal government's recent immigration enforcement operation in Minneapolis, known as Immigration Metro Surge. He also led operations in Los Angeles, Chicago, Charlotte, and New Orleans. The greatest honor of my entire life was to work alongside Border Patrol agents on the border and in the interior of the United States in some of the most challenging conditions the agency has ever faced, Bovino told Breitbart, Texas. Bovino was stripped of his commander-at-large title in January after federal agents fatally shot Alex Preddy and Renee Good in Minneapolis. At the beginning of the month, the Department of Homeland Security launched an investigation into Bovino after he was accused of making anti-Semitic comments about U.S. Attorney Daniel Rosen in Minnesota. Bovino's March 31st retirement comes on the same day that DHS Secretary Kristi Noem steps down from that role. Noem was fired and reassigned within the Trump administration at the beginning of the month. A new rule effective this week could strip up to 200,000 immigrant truck drivers of their commercial driver's licenses, or CDLs. The regulations bar most immigrants from holding the licenses, with the only exceptions being people in the U.S. on temporary agricultural workers visas, temporary non-agricultural workers, or treaty investor visas. News Nation is reporting the newest rule includes barring asylum seekers as well as immigrants with deferred action for childhood arrival status or temporary protected status. There is ongoing litigation to try to block this policy. Now, drivers will lose their licenses as they expire, not immediately, though the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration strongly recommends that states audit their driver's qualifications soon. It is a win for the Trump administration, which has in recent months taken aim at immigrants holding CDLs after several fatal accidents and reports of states illegally issuing those licenses. Now, here's another huge issue facing trucking. The escalating war in the Middle East has the price of fuel continuing to escalate as well. AAA says the average price of gasoline today is $3.79 and diesel is just over $5 a gallon. But when you have to drive in California, those prices soar even higher. Our San Diego correspondent Salvador Rivera found out how much truckers in San Diego are paying to fill up their rigs.
At the TruckNet stop, the cost of diesel was $6.65 per gallon. One trucker paid almost $350 to fuel up. Other stations in Alta Mesa were charging as much as $6.75 a gallon. Truckers have noticed since military operations began in Iran, the cost of fuel has gone up throughout the country.
Right before all this stuff started, I was paying $2.89 to $3.10, and then it's gone up to, yesterday I paid $5.04 in Arizona. Trey Dyer is based in North Carolina. He and other drivers were telling us they are feeling the pinch at the pump, especially in California. We try to get to the lowest prices, so basically I try to fuel up before I come into California, and that way I don't have to fuel up in California at all. When we ran into Dyer, he wasn't fueling up, but looking to wash down his truck. He told us, like others, he is looking for ways to cut down on operating costs. I'm an owner-operator, so I have to take the bigger paying loads. The smaller paying loads just are not worth it right now. And I try to stay at rest areas and places where I don't spend any money at all. I mean, just to stay. One thing Dyer can't afford to do is take a few days off. Because the truck payments every month. We just have to go as hard as we can go. you know, and be wise about how we spend money, where we stop to get fuel, where we stay. I mean, this is rough times right now.
According to Dyer, it's not just truck drivers who end up paying a higher cost for diesel, but all of us as consumers.
It's affecting us, the truckers, and then, of course, all the prices are going to go up too.
And it could get worse, says Dyer. If truckers can't keep on trucking because of the higher cost of diesel, our economy can't keep humming and could grind to a halt.
Everything that you have or purchase comes from us. We bring it to where it's going to be sold. Without us, the whole country would shut down in about 3 days.
Salvador Rivera, Border Report.
Moving on to the environment, plans for a border wall in Texas's Big Bend is facing outrage from conservation groups and others. More than 130 conservation groups, outfitters, and rural Texas businesses sent a letter to Congress last week to block federal funding for border wall construction in Big Bend National Park and Big Bend Ranch State Park. The nonprofit group Center for Biological Diversity says a wall through Big Bend would sever public access to the Rio Grande and devastate the region's wildlife, recreation economy, and natural and cultural heritage. Congress needs to step in and stop this massively destructive, universally despised train wreck before it scars the Big Bend region forever, said Lakin Jordal, national public lands advocate with the Center for Biological Diversity. Last month, the Department of Homeland Security waived 28 environmental laws to fast-track construction in the region. DHS has since awarded construction contracts for much of the region. In late February, DHS released planning maps showing border walls sealing off most areas of the Rio Grande in both parks. Now, Politico is reporting the Trump administration appears to be changing its plans to build a physical wall along a 200-mile stretch of the area. U.S. Customs and Border Protection updated last week an online map of the president's planned border wall construction, with the route through Big Bend changed from planned for construction to detection technology. Bringing it on here to the Rio Grande Valley in Deep South Texas, several new industries are popping up, especially since the arrival of SpaceX over a decade ago. And environmental groups in South Texas have always opposed the border walls along the Rio Grande here in the valley. Joining us now, South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez and our guest for today's program, Jim Chapman, to talk about some of those projects.
Thanks, Rudy. Thanks for joining us, Jim. Jim, you are with Save RGV. I'm just going to tell our viewers, we're actually standing right beside each other here at the stream desk. So Jim is kind of facing me. Well, that's because we're right beside each other, and it's kind of a natural conversation that we're having here. Jim, you're retired, but you've been a long-time volunteer with several organizations, Save RGV, as well as Friends of the Wildlife Corridor. Welcome.
Thank you.
So last week we learned President Trump posted on social media that he said it was a $300 billion oil refinery is going to be built at the Port of Brownsville. Later people from the port said it's actually $3 billion in construction costs, expected to bring 500 jobs. And it's a 20-year deal with an Indian company that's working with America First Refinery, and they're supposed to process 100% U.S. light shale oil. How do you feel about this? Your group Save RGV was originally Save RGV from LNG, which is now at the port there also. And now it looks like there's going to be an oil refinery as well.
Well, the Rio Grande Valley was really the only urbanized area on the Texas coast without petrochemical industry and all that brings with it. It was a blessing, but now the leaders in the valley basically are wanting us to really look like the Houston Ship Channel and other areas on the upper Texas coast that really bring the worst kind of development. It brings visual blight, it brings pollution, it brings lighting and flares and health risks. So I think those are all well known. And I am sad to see that our leaders are basically trying to bring that here.
One of this this project is supposed to be partially hydrogen fueled, and if so, would be the first refinery of its kind online to be powered by hydrogen. I mean, does that bring you any kind of concerns?
Well, this is an area that I don't know a lot about. You know, hydrogen as a fuel source is a real thing. There are some. I think what they are proposing is that to have a power plant, hydrogen power plant, to produce the electricity to run the refinery. I believe that's what they're proposing to do. There are some very small scale refineries that are blending hydrogen in with natural gas. And I don't know if that's their plan or not, but it's still pretty out there. And I guess one question is this really a real thing, or is this basically greenwashing?
Well, President Trump posted it on Truth Social, took us all by surprise, and then everyone's saying this has been in the works for a dozen years. I mean, were you aware of this? Was this something on your radar?
Yes. This is basically the fourth version of a refinery, all with the same man at the helm. One of those efforts, before it ever got off the ground, went into bankruptcy. And the others keep changing their name. Before the first refinery, it was Element Fuel. Before that, it was Jupiter, and I'm forgetting what the one before that was. But it's a kind of a it seems like kind of a retread of efforts that have kind of started and stopped in fits and starts. No actual construction, it raises a lot of questions about how real this is. Now, perhaps the fact that they apparently have, large funding from India, maybe that is actually going to make this happen. But I think you have to have a little skepticism that this is everything that President Trump says it will be.
We have a statement from the Brownsville Navigation District Chairman, Esteban Guerra, talking about this project. I think, Devin, we can call it up. He says, quote, "This announcement is a defining moment for our region. We have the land, the infrastructure, the workforce, and the commitment to get it done. This is exactly the kind of transformative investment that strengthens our economy and creates real opportunity for South Texas families." Jim, you don't see it as opportunity. Let viewers know, what is this area like? Describe the land, the geography here in this area that they're planning on putting.
Well, the port land is what they call greenfield, meaning it is natural land. It's not. There's brownfield, which is land that has been previously developed and either is being rebuilt or whatever. But this basically is land that, for the most part, is covered in salt prairie and lomas. It's basically natural, various types of natural habitat that is in and of itself is very valuable. But it doesn't produce oil and so forth. There appears to be no industry that is too polluting for the port to want to attract.
I think you had a conversation with a previous port director or someone there who you were talking about what kind of industries are safe to have here and what wouldn't they want.
Yeah, I posed the same question to him. I said, what industry would you say no to? He said oil refining.
And who was this?
This was the previous executive director.
Okay.
Should remember. Anyway, he is no longer the executive director, and probably the ultimate decision makers are the port commissioners.
And it is an elected board.
It is an elected board.
Yeah, just to let people know.
Yeah.
The port is huge here, and what I've been learning about this is since 2000, there have only been 7 refineries built in the United States. This one would have the capacity of processing 168,000 barrels per day. Now compare that to Galveston, which has the largest refinery in the country, and it's capable of processing 630,000 barrels per day. We mentioned briefly LNG. That's also at the port, right? Mm-hmm. And that brought you all a bunch of concerns when that one came online a few years ago.
Yeah, it did. Getting back to the refinery, I mean, all that oil, there is no oil pipeline from the Eagle Ford Shale or the Permian Basin to the port. So that would come in on rail cars. And that volume, you're talking about a tremendous amount of rail cars coming into the port every day. So that's one of the concerns that we have. But it's really an industry that doesn't belong in an area like this that is so rich in natural resources and for which tourism and nature tourism are such big parts of the economy.
We're speaking with Jim Chapman of Save RGV and Friends of the Wildlife Corridor about the environmental concerns with this new oil refinery popping up here in South Texas. We're going to take a quick break. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Border Report Live. Joining me today, South Texas correspondent Sandra Sanchez and Jim Chapman of the Friends of the Wildlife Corridor and Save RGV.
Yeah, Jim and I are standing right next to each other, so we're looking at each other, having this conversation. We mentioned briefly about LNG, but I kind of want viewers to understand that it's like a confluence of events happening here. SpaceX has developed this multi-billion-dollar rocket industry here, just right on the beach there in Boca Chica, and it is just a few miles, 4 miles as the crow flies from the Port of Brownsville, which now is going to have an oil refinery, says the president, and an LNG that's under construction. Jim, when your organization Save RGV from LNG, that was the name of it when it first formed. Now it's just Save RGV. You had real concerns about LNG opening there. And did you win or lose? And what's happening now?
Well, what's happening now is that Rio Grande LNG is under construction. Although we and a lot of other people and groups really fought it really since 2014 when it really first surfaced. Ultimately there were 5 LNG companies that wanted to be along the ship channel in Brownsville, and that it ended up now there's 1 that's under construction. So. Were we a factor in why it went from 5, to 1? It's hard to say, but we did take every opportunity to try and inform the public about the hazards and the impacts of having such a massive facility. And, for people that want to get an idea of what that means, just drive along Highway 48 and you'll see how massive, truly massive that is. And of course it will be visible from South Padre Island, Port Isabel, miles around, with everything that comes with it, in terms of emissions, flaring, light, traffic, and risk.
Well, and one of the risks I know that had, SpaceX is sending up rockets. There was a wildfire that had been associated with a rocket launch. Near the launch facility, but the LNG port is within the realm of possibility that a rocket could go up. Is there a concern that there could be an explosion?
Well, I think that has to be a concern, and not only with the LNG plant, but the LNG tankers that will be going up and down the ship channel and going through the jetties. The jetties is quite a bit closer to the SpaceX launch pad than the actual liquefaction facility. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's within the closure area for a launch. So I think that is, the risk there is small, but it's real and catastrophic if it actually happens. So yes, that's a concern.
Now, also with regards to SpaceX, they have proposed a land swap with Fish and Wildlife. SpaceX wants to acquire 712 acres that are adjacent to where it currently is and flip it with Fish and Wildlife for 692 acres elsewhere. You represent Friends of the Wildlife Corridor. Would that be the same lands that they would be swapping if, in fact, that went through?
Well, that wouldn't that most of that doesn't involve a land around the SpaceX launch site. I think there is one tiny parcel that does, but one of the issues with that land swap, back last June there was a massive SpaceX rocket explosion at their Massey test site, huge fireball that burned quite a few acres of the adjacent National Wildlife Refuge. That damage to the refuge was never acknowledged by SpaceX, never apologized for, never, no restitution or anything for the damage that they did. That's the land that they now want to own. And of course, it would be cleared for industrial or residential commercial purposes. There was a damage assessment report done on that explosion by Fish and Wildlife Service. It was done, I think, 3 days after the explosion. I haven't seen it. They have never released it, even though it's been 9 months. We did a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act, and first that was delayed, and then we were recently told that we would not get it at all because releasing it might jeopardize a law enforcement investigation. And so I think because that has a bearing on this land exchange, I really think that land exchange should be put on pause until that damage assessment report is released to the public, because that really has a bearing on that land swap. The land that SpaceX wants is excellent wildlife habitat right along the Rio Grande, which is the essence of the lower Rio Grande Valley National Wildlife Refuge, also referred to as the Wildlife Corridor.
And that's also where the border buoys are going in. And I know that we're kind of running out of time to talk about them. Those are already started to be put into the Rio Grande. There's environmental waivers that were issued by current Secretary Kristi Noem, and 22 miles of those border buoys are going right in there now. So it's like a big hit to the environment from all directions.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but we are unfortunately out of time for today. But Jim, we appreciate you joining us. Jim Chapman of Save RGV and Friends of the Wildlife Corridor. Stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Border Report Live. In Austin, Texas, police have new orders on how they can handle warrants and detainer requests issued by ICE. As Grace Reeder explains, city leaders say the orders are meant to protect the people of Austin from unconstitutional and violent federal operations.
At a time when federal leaders are in gridlock over President Donald Trump's immigration policy and enforcement,
ICE is unbelievable what they have to put up with and how tough they have to be.
Some Austin City Council members have proposed new ways to, quote, protect the people of Austin from unconstitutional and violent federal operations.
We heard very loudly and clearly that Austinites want more protections. They want to see us stand up to the federal administration.
They've got 5 proposals, among them looking into banning law enforcement from wearing face coverings in the city, making sure APD responds to calls where ICE may have entered a property without a warrant and documenting that, and publicly releasing any videos caught on city cameras and body cams of, quote, violence or property damage by federal officials.
We have to take action, and we have to ensure that we're doing everything that we can in the fullest extent of our authority.
Next, the city manager will take those suggestions and report back to council within 30 days. KXAN asked the city manager how he will make sure all of these actions follow state and federal law. The city responded, quote, we will carefully review the recommendations and work closely with the appropriate departments to ensure any actions taken are both legally sound and aligned with our responsibilities, mission, and philosophy. So far, Texas Republicans don't appear to be publicly engaging with this city initiative, but have historically been critical of Austin's approach. KXAN has reached out to ICE and not yet heard back.
We will be compliant with state law. You know, it's unfortunate that we live in an era where we have state lawmakers and federal lawmakers who want to retaliate versus understanding that we are a home rule city.
Grace Reeder, KXAN News.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.